Live, our weekly live show without our captain. With me today is Diane Hansen, our resident flight attendant, and Captain Eric Larson, who is going to jump into the pilot seat here for tonight. I'm going to give everybody a quick update on Captain Ron's medical status in a little bit. But I just want to welcome you if you are new to the show. This is our weekly live show where we are discussing everything related to fear of flying, aviation, and how we can look at flying in a way that produces excitement and joy and positive emotions and feelings rather than those dreaded anxiety and fear and, well, you know that if you're a fearful flyer. So let's jump in quick here. Captain Ron, for those of you who may not know, he went for a divorce and he divorced his gallbladder very unceremoniously a couple of nights ago. He is definitely getting back to life, getting back to health. He just came home. He sends his love. And some of you have already reached out. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to say he will be back for the last show of the year, right? Next week. Is that true? Oh my God. Okay, so let's jump into this show. We have a Birds of a Feather Facebook group that we would love for you to join and participate in. It's a group about 650 members right now, and you see the link on the screen. This is really I'd like to think of it as a family. Though in a family you have different different relationships, and so we have lots of awesome posts, funny posts, help I'm flying posts, everything in between, and there's a lot of support and a lot of good vibes. So check it out. It's a close group. Just ask to join and we'll welcome you. Okay, and tonight's show, when do you see yourself traveling again? There is actually a link. I'm going to put it in the comments in a little bit later. It gets you to a SurveyMonkey survey that we created because we really want to gauge the mood of, you out there. How do you feel about flying? And depending on where in the world, and depending on what kind of stories you're listening and watching to, you may be more or less inclined to fly. And I'm gonna just hand off here. Let me try and find the stop button. So Diane and Captain Eric, what do you like in terms of when you see yourself flying again? Diane, you're flying. Where do you spend Christmas, Diane?
Well, when do I see myself flying? Tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning I start a 4-day trip, and I will be going tomorrow back and forth to Grand Junction, Colorado, then back and forth to Yuma, and then to Fresno. Spend tomorrow night in Fresno, and then the next morning at dark 30, coming from Fresno back to Phoenix, and then to Billings, Montana. So I will be spending Christmas Eve in Billings, Montana. So I'll have to pack my wool coat for all that. And then Christmas Day, we go from Billings to Phoenix to Palm Springs, where it will be 70.
I love that.
Yes, and I will have to pack something else for that. And then Palm Springs back, and then ultimately Saturday back to Phoenix, and then down and back to Mexico, Hermosillo, Mexico.
And so just for those of us who don't fly quite as much as you do, how full are your planes, generally speaking? You're flying for a smaller regional
right,
carrier?
I for regional, and my planes have been pretty full. So I was looking on the loads for at least the next couple of days, and we're pretty full. Mine's a 65 passenger plane, and we're upwards of 50, 55, 60 passengers.
Wow. Yeah. And Captain Eric, we're going to talk with you a little later about updates on the Boeing 737 Max. certification, what's going on there. We won't spill the beans quite yet, but we do have something about simulators. And so I just wanted to kind of like weigh in, because we are seeing that the demand for flying domestically in the US is actually not as bad as it's been forecasted. So there's definitely quite a bit of people movement, and so we just want to talk about that a little bit. And then also in our aviation news roundup today or tonight, we have a Delta incident that you, Diane, will
Oh, yes.
tell us about.
I can't wait.
So let me just pull up the chat so that I can see what's going on here. There you go. Do your own technology. It's a lot less fun.
While you're looking for
yeah.
that, I'll just throw in the second one. Diane said domestic demand is
Yeah.
picking up quite a bit ahead of forecast, but international is still almost dead. And part of that's because people don't, quote unquote, have to do that, number one. And two, the foreign countries can be considerably more restrictive in terms of entry and quarantine and what they'll allow. So that's kept that flat, absolutely flat. And that's probably going to take the vaccine.
Yeah, and we talked about that last week on the show about the COVID passport that kind of unifies these global entry requirements that right now you couldn't go into Australia without a vaccination. So if you don't have a vaccination, Australia is off the table for you. That for the rest of foreseeable future, for sure. I don't think that they're gonna go back on it unless there's some other compelling reason. And it'll just be added to the type of, but globally, to a type of a passport, what it amounts to, that enough nations and airlines and carriers can agree to, because it has to be all administered as well, right? And
sure.
Somebody died of COVID after a flight recently.
Yes, I think it was the United flight.
It was United, and so that person filled out the questionnaire, declared themselves as non-COVID, and maybe in their best good conscience didn't even know about it. Who knows?
No,
I don't know enough. I just know that clearly wasn't a good situation, and when there is better ways of making sure or ensuring that regulations are being followed, then I think that then we will see the international travel come back online. I'm itching to go back to Austria.
A lot of people are.
So
yeah, and he got found out the normal way. He was already deceased, but then his wife called in and said, "Oh yeah, he's a sick puppy. Yeah, he's got COVID, absolutely." And so they're like, "Oh," after the fact.
Okay, so let me try this again. I see. Okay, I see the comments. I see that Susan Miglagio is on. Hey, Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Tracy Solis. Hey, Tracy. Heather and Michelle Villa. Hi. So please, if you guys haven't filled out the poll question and everyone else is watching, and by the way, if Sarah is watching, I just want to throw this in here, and I'm gonna put us back into gallery here. So because of Captain Ron's untimely gallbladder incident, we had a coaching call scheduled with him, a free 15-minute coaching call, and I was left to contact that person and say, hey, this is what's happening. I'm happy to jump on the call with you, and you seem anxious to fly. And yeah, we had a great 15-minute coaching call, and proceeded to an hour, because it's always fascinating. we always talk about two categories of fearful flyers, right? The emotional category, where you're really more afraid of losing control and losing control of your feelings, and you're cool when the doors close or even beforehand. And the other category is really more the mechanical triggers of flying, which is plane crashing, turbulence, bringing down the plane, the crowd favorites, basically. And so but those, both of these stories obviously have one thing in common, other than they suck. They really have a fear that's underneath, that is being transferred onto flying, and that's why it's a phobia, because it's irrational, right? And people often even say as much. I know it's not rational. And yet you can't help stop having that physical experience and that mental and that emotional experience of anxiety and dread, and feeling exhausted before you even get out of bed. or even have problems committing to booking a flight, right? And we all can endure quite a bit of pain, but there comes a point in everyone's journey where you kind of weigh your options and reconsider, and that's what the coaching call is really for. So, but there were a couple of questions that, of course, you guys are much better suited to answer those mechanical aspects. And one of them, and I'm just going to throw it right here to you, Diane, and we're going to go right into that Delta incident, because one of the questions was about the door closing, right?
Right. About the door closing.
Can anybody open the door, and is it different for different jets? Or
That is the question we get a whole lot of time, and that is for a lot of the fearful flyers. When that door shuts, they can see their whole life passing in front of them, just for that moment. And the question always is, can you open the door? Can you open the door? Well, in flight, no. There's no way you can do that. Trust me, you cannot. I can't open the door. The pilots can come from the flight deck. No one's opening that door in the air. However, when the plane's on the ground, the doors can get open. There are different kinds of doors for different kinds of planes. And this particular incident was just reported. I just read about it earlier, that two passengers and a dog, imagine, with the dog, were on a Delta flight in LaGuardia, and the plane had pushed back and was beginning to taxi. And one of them managed to get apparently forward. I'm going to have to get the details on it in the next day or two, and managed to open the door. And on that particular aircraft, like many of them, when you open the doors after they've been armed, which means they are set for an emergency situation, there's a slide. Just as you see probably on television or whatever, a slide popped out and out they went, the two of them and the dog. So that can happen. The doors can be opened on the ground. They just can't be opened in the air. And so, of course, as Eric and I and you were talking about earlier, those individuals are going to have an interesting time with the legal system in the United States. They were arrested and carried off. We're talking not only a bad deal, but it's a federal offense apart from other kinds of things, because apparently they obviously disobeyed the flight attendants. Everybody sit down, that sort of thing. So we'll get more of the details as we go on, but
okay. So we have a couple of comments, and I just want to jump in here.
sure.
And overall, Michelle says people who lie about COVID on a flight, that's what scares her. It's not the precautions of the airport and the airlines is inadequate. It's more that the best system fails when you put humans in it. So
Exactly.
and that's not
That's a reasonable fear.
Yeah, that's a reasonable fear, and to be honest, that's to me too, that would be more so. So And of course, the slide could be fun, and that fun obviously has consequences. I hope they enjoyed it, because I was thinking too, whoa, they got to write down in the slide.
And you know, that's interesting. In order to pass training, one of the things we have to do as flight attendants is we have to go down the slide. Our training facilities have slides. We have to do that. And certainly in our controlled atmosphere, it's probably a little more interesting and more fun than what they experienced. I mean, one of the other things is that aircraft had to be refitted. They have to, maintenance has to come. It's a very those things run about $2 or $3 grand easy, just the slide. So
Wow.
it's a very expensive operation to have one of those deploy.
It's not your average Disney theme park.
No, that's not a ride. You don't have to be 4 feet tall.
And here's a question that is super, actually, I was wondering about that too. Susan is asking, is that a Santa on your necklace?
It's a Christmas tree.
It's a Christmas tree.
It's a brooch.
Let me see here. I'll put your, there we go. It looks very, very beautiful and festive.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
I'm trying to be festive because I have to get which goes back to where I'm going to be for Chris, the glamorous aspect of this.
Right.
3 mornings out of the 4 mornings, I'll be getting up probably about 3:30 to 4. So yeah, the glamour ends. Trust me, it
makes the glamour part harder.
we hope that all the passengers fall asleep first thing when they get on the plane, so they don't have to see us.
Yeah, all without the glitter right there. Captain Eric, we got some updates as promised on the Max. So let's jump right in, and I'm gonna queue up our share here. So what do we know about the latest kind of development? Because we know that airlines, because of the demand and because of, trying to be as frugal and as responsible as possible, are, really eyeing these planes to come back, because when they are flying and behaving as they should, supposedly they're really, really, really great airplanes, right? So what do you have to tell us there?
All true. The unfortunate news, very recent unfortunate news, everybody wanted the recertification process to be smooth. And obviously there was a tremendous financial interest in doing it as quickly as possible. Certainly Boeing, the airlines, the FAA, all had an interest in this going cleanly. The regrettable thing is that there was a report released recently with the title line you have on the side, talking about Boeing test pilots inappropriately coaching pilots in the simulator on how to do the recovery for the redesigned MCAS equipment. And we've talked about that exhaustively, but that is a system that provides horizontal stabilizer inputs under certain power settings and angles of attack. Nevertheless, it was redesigned, new software, and the pilots had to go through training to make sure that they could operate the airplane safely with a faulty system. But regrettably, as the line talked about the coaching, some of the data is not as clean as one would hope because of this inappropriate coaching of the pilots flying. And on occasion, they did tests in simulators that did not have the new software installed. So those data points are completely invalid. And in some cases, FAA inspectors were not there or present or left before the tests were conducted.
So the obvious question here, Eric, is why did Boeing do that? I mean, it's not like that they are on a high in the PR department. So why do you think that? What was their reasoning?
It really is kind of shocking, but obviously at some level of middle management, people took it upon themselves to say, hey, we need this to work. We need to do it as quickly as possible. It's costing us God knows how many $1 million a day. And so we know this new system that we designed now works. We just need to streamline this recertification process and throwing some caution to the winds. Let me do an example real quick. since our chief is not here, I brought him here in spirit. And this is Captain Ron, who is now sitting in front of a simulator panel. So an example of this would be if Captain Ron was in the simulator and I'm the sim instructor and I'm talking to him, and we're getting ready to work on some maneuvers, and Captain Ron goes, "Are we going to work on the stuck park and brake today where I go home?" And I go, "No." "Are we going to work on changing flat tires so I can go in the terminal and eat?" And I go, "No." I said, "Ron, we're going to work on the MCAS recovery." And he goes, "Okay. And here's what's exactly going to happen on this maneuver.
Okay.
At 500 feet, the airplane is either going to pitch up or pitch down, but I'll tell them the airplane's going to pitch up. So you remember, yoke forward, trim switches all the way forward, stabilizer trim switches cut off, and then get out your checklist and do everything after that memory response. Ready at 500 feet, it's going to pitch up, so you're going to counter it." Well, that's not how it's going to occur in the airplane with normal line pilots. They're going to be sitting there thinking about what they're going to do in the layover or where they're going to eat in Billings, Montana, or something like that on Christmas, and the airplane's going to have this malfunction, and they're going to have time to recognize, deal with it, and take care of it in order to effect a recovery.
So
by virtue of
Eric,
me
let me just stop here for a second.
Sure.
So what you're saying is that you guys already have, as pilots being trained by the company, a process, right, that you would follow, again, if any emergency like the ones that, were the fatal ones.
Exactly right.
You would still need to go through a process. It's not like you were sitting there waiting for it to happen.
Exactly right. And all the pilots have already been trained on this. So they're supposed to be aware and competent with that. But obviously, if I'm standing there whispering in Captain Ron's ear exactly when this is going to occur and what the first 1, 2, 3 things he's going to do are, that's going to greatly speed his reaction time and the correctness of his response. So that will skew the data as the numbers come in.
Okay, great. So that obviously, and really, just as much as you can tell us, is what are obvious consequences of that data not being reflective of what,
Well, this is the basis of which the airplanes were reissued their airworthiness certificate. And these are essentially tests or proving runs showing that a competent 737 pilot can deal with this situation correctly and in X amount of time. And when you have issues of the coaching or it being conducted in a simulator without the modification on it, or unsupervised by the FAA, or the FAA looking the other way, then that casts shade, as the current expression is, on the test results of what a normal line pilot would take to recover. And this would be the picture like I was just doing with the Captain Ron thing. Captain Ron would be in the left seat, first officer in the right, and the simulator instructor, excuse me, would be right behind him and could lean forward to them, in between them, and tell them exactly what's happening. Or he could just use his panel and talk through their headsets like he's a controller.
Okay. So I just, okay. So this is a perfect segue, because thank you so much for that detailed explanation, because I really appreciate it. But I also want to bring in what Tracy and okay. So Tracy is asking, does someone get in trouble for this? So that's an obvious question. Is there some accountability? Is there some, and we might get back to the whole another divorce, and that was that the European, aviation certification body kind of like divorced from the FAA as being the prime source of aviation.
The answer to that, Tracy, is yes, absolutely. Especially now that this is public information, this casts a pall over those test results, and they may have to be rerun to revalidate the engineering fix on this system. a lot of, it may cost a lot of time delay and a lot of money, and the people directly involved in not conducting the tests properly will probably have some serious repercussions.
And that's really the crux of it, because ultimately we don't even know whether or not in the final analysis it really
Right.
was malicious or whatever, but it does point to a cultural kind of problem within that Boeing culture. And
Exactly.
And it undermines the confidence
Mhm.
that the passengers,
Exactly.
the flying public. I mean, when they all got taken out of service, I think for many flyers, they thought, okay, good. They've looked at these planes, and they said that the situation is not a good one. They're not going to bring them back until everything's fixed. Just to put it in layman's terms, it's all got to get fixed. Well, with this particular report, basically they were cheating. I mean, it just seems that they were cheating. I mean, just put it in a high school math class. They were given the answers before the test.
Yeah.
And that goes to undermining again the confidence that the flying public has in this particular aircraft.
And Tracy,
Exactly right.
That's the stuff that makes her scary about flying.
Right.
But I will say this. I really want to say this, and this is why we're bringing it up, actually, because that's what the point is. And the point is, once again, that type of questionable behavior and questionable cultural kind of bias that's going on there, Boeing, FAA, and whatnot, because the aviation industry does have so many checks and balances, and really, it is the safest mode of transportation for a reason, so even in this kind of capitalistic push that's maybe driving some of these decisions, right? And we don't know that for certain. Maybe they were just so convinced that everything is great, so all they needed to do was, hey, I just tell you what's going to happen and it's fine. I have no idea, but the point is, again, like you said there, and it undermines the trustworthiness, and also the kind of like the being connected to the customer ultimately, because the customer are actually not the people who are flying, it's the airlines, right? And they already have enough on their plate, and they could really use this plane in full capacity, right, Eric? I mean, that plane isn't all bad. I mean, let's talk about that too real quick.
No, it's a good design. It's a great airplane, and it hurts Southwest the worst because they own the most of them, and American second. And I know American has booked flights on them starting December 29th, and Southwest very shortly thereafter. So the airlines needed this to be a bed of roses, the recertification, and they need the airplanes and they need the lift, and they need a good PR off of this. So this is a shame on a lot of levels.
Yeah. But once again, it is caught long before it could potentially again, put lives in danger. At this point, it's really more getting to the heart of the culture in this whole, connection.
Checking. And I'll just say briefly, the redesign of the system is good, and it works well. And the airline pilots have been trained and will be well trained on it. And I would have no qualms at all about getting on the airplane. And I would have no qualms that if the pilots had that kind of stabilizer problem, that they would be able to handle it real well in the airplane, which just makes it a shame that they're pencil whipping the testing, because I think the system and the pilots would work well.
Yeah, right.
And it was unnecessary.
Yeah, and I think that's important too, because despite all the the pilot jokes and flight attendant jokes and whatnot, I mean, there is a sense of responsibility still part of this whole system that ultimately is designed, and anybody who has listened or watched Capt Ron talk, it used to be called that human factor component. It's the study of the psychology between unequal relationships in the left chair and the right chair, and what happens in different cultures, where culturally that's a big deal. And how can you prevent just simple miscommunication? It doesn't have to be these worst case scenarios. It's just simple miscommunication. And so that's really at the heart of listening to also what airlines are trying to convey to their passengers too.
Right. Sure.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but you guys also, you're at the mercy of the person filling out that, no, I don't have COVID. No, I haven't been with somebody with COVID. You don't know. I mean, you require the person, or at least you hope that the person would be honest and respectful, because
Sure.
you're there for their safety. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Well, guys, that was awesome. I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate all of us coming on here and doing a really hopefully informative and engaging show. And fingers crossed, next week Capt Ron will be back, and one thing I'm sure, guys, he'll have a story to share, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. So
Absolutely. Yes. For sure.
Don't egg him on, and don't ask for pictures.
oh my God, no, I won't.
Do
We do
Bad
want to.
idea.
Careful.
But,
what you-
but yeah, so thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here, and please share it with a friend or somebody that you know is afraid to fly, and tune in next week with Captain Ron, hopefully again. All right, guys, have a great week, and talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.